I am Professor Cox, the digital avatar of Stan Cox, who writes every script that I present. In this episode, I will be discussing the book Consolation of Philosophy, written by Ancius Manlius Severinus Boethius. If asked to describe myself educationally, I would say that I am a classicist, a medievalist, and a liberal artist. That said, I would clarify that I do not consider myself to be a scholar as much as an amateur in the literal sense of the word, meaning that my attachment to the subject matter is much more about love than it is about technical scholarship. If queried by a potential student or enthusiast, what should I read first? My mind would immediately turn to the greatest literary work of all time, Dante's Divine Comedy. Realizing, however, that tackling this would probably be daunting and discouraging to a novice, I would direct them to a more appropriate beginning with Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. My reasons for suggesting this would be several. First, it is arguably the most influential literary and philosophical work for almost a millennium during the formative era of European development. There are a number of ways I could back this statement up, but the most obvious is how often and by whom it was translated during this period. Remember that most important works at the time were only available in Latin and sometimes Greek. Very few works were available in the vernacular language due to limited literacy and lack of the means for mass production and distribution. Nevertheless, the Consolation was translated into Old English by Alfred the Great, Middle English by Geoffrey Chaucer, and Early Modern English by Queen Elizabeth I, who was quite a scholar in her own right. Another reason for recommending it, besides the fact that it is relatively short and fairly accessible to the uninitiated, is that it provides a nice integration of classical and medieval models and cosmologies. Readers will find elements of the Stoicism of Marcus Aurelius, as well as the universal archetypes of the Platonists and Neoplatonists. At the same time, they will encounter the novel dialectic between poetic and prose passages throughout the work. The most amazing contribution I find to be that in this work, Boethius provides what essentially becomes the musical Christian cosmology of the European Middle Ages without mentioning Christ or the Church once throughout. Boethius was a Roman senator and statesman under Theodoric the Great, the Ostrogothic king of Italy and Rome at the turn of the 6th century. The Goths were predominantly warriors and conquerors and had little experience in administrating and ruling large territories. So they allowed the Roman Senate to remain intact to perform administrative functions. Boethius became his chief advisor, which came with a great deal of fame, prestige, wealth, and power. The Ostrogoths were predominantly Arians, denying Christ's deity and the doctrine of the Trinity, while members of the Roman nobility and Senate adhered to the Nicene Creed in line with the orthodoxy of Justin I, the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, whom Theodoric feared might want to reunite the empire at his expense. Apparently, those jealous of Boethius' lofty position accused him of conspiring with Justinian, which landed him in jail, condemned to die. He was executed in a gruesome fashion around AD 524. It is while Boethius was imprisoned with a death sentence that he wrote the Consolation. He plays himself and begins by bemoaning his lot. He is the ultimate had it all, then lost it all story. And the agony is intensified because he was falsely accused. The allegorical figure of Lady Philosophy appeared to him, and her description of her garment alone encompasses the length and breadth of the philosophical landscape. Boethius points out that many philosophers had the habit of tearing off a piece of her robe and presenting it as if it were the whole. In the beginning, Boethius weeps concerning his incredibly bad luck, to which Lady Philosophy clarifies that there is no such thing as luck and everything happens for a reason. She then goes on to completely dismantle the notion of luck by introducing the name of the second longest running game show, The Wheel of Fortune, explaining that with luck all circumstances are random and essentially meaningless. She even implied that the only good luck is bad luck, as only then does one understand its impersonal and random nature. The elegant lady then explains that Boethius's unhappiness has nothing to do with his current circumstances and echoes Marcus Aurelius in saying, in essence, happiness is an inside job. She concludes this discussion by illustrating that anything that can change or can be lost can never be the source of true happiness. Thus, happiness can only be found in embracing the life that the eternal and unchangeable God has in store for us. It is in this discussion that he introduced the concept of the music of the spheres, in which he describes that all of creation moves in harmony with the music of God's love, which is the source of said music, and that we have evidence of that musical harmony every time we look at the heavens. He also points out that we humans, being the furthest from the source of that music, tend to mess things up continually by substituting our own dissonant alternatives. The Consolation concludes by addressing the false dichotomy we create when considering the juxtaposition of God's providence with man's free will and moral responsibility. He dispenses with this supposed conflict by simply meditating on the nature of God's eternity, the ever-present now, illustrating that our attempts to reconcile these issues is evidence of the limitations to our temporal understanding. So why does he develop this medieval Christian cosmology without any reference to Christ or the Orthodox Christian faith, for which he can be considered a martyr? The simple answer is that he believed that authentic philosophical inquiry and Christian faith all point to the same worldview and the same outcomes. They are synchronous rather than oppositional. He also illustrates, like the Apostle Paul in various Psalms, that God's truth is apparent to all. If we honestly seek the truth, we will find it, and we will find him, or more accurately, he will find us. If you appreciate this type of material, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. This is Professor Cox saying thank you for sharing your time with me.